All right, guys, welcome back to another video. First, before we start this video, a couple things. Shortfield created a really good video on this, so I want to give credit to him. Great breakdown of it. I'm going to add in my 2 cents. I just want to also pay my respects to the 2 lives that were lost in this. I was hesitant to make videos about fatalities and accident analysis because I don't like the feeling of thinking that, oh, this is like a good video to analyze. And then it's a good video to analyze because these people made a really terrible, one of them at least probably made a really terrible mistake. So I didn't want to feel like I'm exploiting these people because I'm really not. I want to pull lessons out of this because if we can extract lessons from accidents like this, we can prevent them from happening in the future. These lessons that we learn are often written in blood. So, with that being said, rest in peace to these 2 pilots, and let's break down what happened. Once again, thanks for Shortfield for making this video.
A transmission over the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, or CTAF, captured a low-pitched grunting sound, followed by the instructor screaming, "Let go, let go, let go." The grunting sound continued, and the airplane pitched aggressively nose up and began to climb almost vertically with the engine at high power, before levelling off about 100 to 200 feet above the runway, flipping over, then spinning to the left, descending and colliding with the ground. Most of the airframe was...
All right, so pretty crazy, right? You can tell that the aircraft is pitched completely nose up, and we'll talk about why in a second. But I mean, that pitch attitude
engine at high
was
power.
is absolutely mind blowing. So, like when I first saw this video, I was shocked at that pitch attitude. And then in the audio, you can hear it's actually terrifying. So I'm not going to play it. Is the female instructor saying "Let go, let go, let go," and she's screaming. All right, so someone in the student is not letting go of the flight controls, or it's a trim thing. So we'll look at the NTSB's findings real quick. So no mechanical malfunctions were detected on this. Flaps were at full extension. The pitch trim servo was consumed by fire such that the trim position could not be determined, which I'll talk about in a second, okay?
Blades indicated that the engine was producing power at impact and the flaps were in a configuration appropriate for landing. Toxicology and medical examination was produced.
All right. Let me play this back just a little
and
bit.
colliding. Examination did not reveal any evidence of or a failure. Indicated that
anyways, I want to do in this
reported
NTSB report
of the accident to be inability
here it is, right
to
here.
maintain control of the airplane during the landing flare due to the passenger's excessive control inputs, which resulted in the airplane exceeding its critical angle of attack and entering an aerodynamic stall. For whatever...
Okay, so this is a pretty, I think, straightforward breakdown. So it looks like what happened here is one of 2 things. I'm assuming one of them, okay? But we can deduce that it was one of 2 things. First is that there is a female instructor and there was a passenger, or a student more likely, who froze up on the flight controls, pulled up on the flight controls, and got so vapor locked, essentially, in that fear that he just kept pulling back on the flight controls and would not let go. And this female could likely not overpower him. And as a flight instructor, when somebody locks up on the flight controls, like actually locks up, it is really difficult to get them off of the flight controls, especially if you only have a couple moments. There's been a couple instances where I've been doing power on stalls with students, and we dip a wing, and I go to put in the inputs to get us out of that potential spin, and the yoke just does not budge because they are just locked on to those flight controls. They will not let go. When somebody has adrenaline in their system and they're scared, they are incredibly strong. So that's most likely what happened here, is that this female instructor was trying to counter this the inputs that the student was putting in, and she was either A, not strong enough, or B, it was too late. Another probable, I don't want to say probable cause, but something that I'm also thinking of too is I'm not a big fan of trimming for landing. I do not like putting nose up trim into the landing, and I do not let my students do it, because what happens is that they often put in too much nose trim, that when they have to do a go around or they put full power, they rotate, that nose trim shoots them up like this, and it just makes the takeoff. It's just risky, honestly. And you can actually demo this stall as a CFI, being like, this is what happens when you put in too much nose trim and you do a go around, okay? you know, in a normal go around procedure, you're supposed to apply that full power, and then you're supposed to like, don't let the nose flail up like that, because if you push power without touching the yoke and you have nose up trim, the nose is going to go straight up. So push that power and push that nose down a little bit, incrementally put your flaps out, climb away, right? If you have too much nose trim and you're not paying attention to that yoke, your nose is going to go straight up. So I'm wondering if that's what happened here, if they trimmed for landing and there was just way too much nose up trim and they could not overpower the flight controls. That is super unlikely. I do not think that two people unable to overcome the forces of that trim, highly unlikely. What most likely happened is that this male student locked up, wouldn't let go of the flight controls, and they induced a power off stall. All right, so what's the lesson from this? Yeah, as a CFI, the first thing I'm thinking is like, when I have a brand new student on takeoff, I do not let them touch. Like I'm talking brand new, like an hour or two in. I I will not let them touch the flight controls because I'm afraid of them locking up. I'll let them fly the airplane all around the sky, but for the first 2 hours, like you're not landing that thing. If anything, if I have a stud, I'll have them get me on final approach, kind of, but I'm not letting them touch the flight controls. I actually got to the point to where I will tell them not to touch the flight controls. All right, for any phases of critical phases of flight, like takeoff, landing, and climb, because I'm afraid of that lock, and I'll have them sit on their hands, or I'll just simply tell them. And I told myself, I'm like, what in this situation, if a student locks up and will not let go of the flight controls, and we're about to die, what am I to do if I can't overpower them? And I was talking to my old flight instructor, and he's like, you throat chop them. And I was like, that is gnarly. So I'm like thinking that if I ever was in a scenario where I could not overpower my student for whatever reason, I'm going to throat chop them, because the alternative is death. And when someone's locked up on the flight controls, it is really, really hard to get them out. So, yeah,
Began to
really,
climb
this is like a CFI's nightmare right here. This is really like one of the worst case scenarios. Is this
almost
happening?
vertically with the engine at high power before leveling
Boom. Pretty bad. So what's the takeaway? If you're a CFI, just be mindful of your students. If you're a student, I would be cautious about trimming nose up for landing. Another reason why I don't like trimming for landing is because it relieves control pressures. And that's not a problem. That's what trim is there for. But when you're coming in for a landing, you really need to feel that plane out. And often the more inputs that you can feel, the plane is trying to talk to you. Okay, the plane is telling you, hey, I need a little bit more nose up. I need a little bit more nose down. I need a little bit more power. And when you trim for that landing, you're kind of like shutting off that communication a little bit, at least as a low level pilot, and you're unable to communicate with the plane as well as you could. So I just advise my students, like, don't, when I see them playing with a trim wheel for a landing, I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to lock in that 65, but I'd advise against it. All right. Now it changes a little bit once you get into the bigger planes. Of course, you're going to want to trim for those landings a little bit more. I think, yeah, like in my multi-engine training right now, I'm trimming for landings. But in a Cessna, you don't need to trim for landing, bro. Just lock in that 65, use your biceps, and you'll be fine. Okay, it's not that crazy, but really unfortunate. All right, so. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video for the most part. Go ahead and leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you for the next one.